Good morning. The first temple service I attended was in April 2011, a little more than 15 years ago. I remember the date because, by coincidence, it was the celebration of Great Awakening Day in honor of the founding master of Won Buddhism, Sotaesan. This Dharma hall was still under construction. My wife Julie and I joined about 20 other people, that was all, next door in what is now the residence. As we do today, we bowed, chanted, meditated, and heard a Dharma talk. We sat in a circle on cushions that quickly became uncomfortable. There was no grand plan that got me there. Julie had attended the previous week when I was out of town for work. She said she wanted to go back and asked if I'd like to join her. Sure. I had no idea what to expect, but I thought it might be interesting. 15 years later, I'm still here. I haven't done many things that have lasted as long. Today, I'd like to share with you the winding path I've taken and am still taking, and what it all has meant to me. It started, as do most journeys, with curious interest and a heap of ignorance. I knew nothing about Won Buddhism or any Buddhism. Mine was a secular Jewish family with emphasis on the secular. But there were a few things here that caught my attention right away. We talk about having a beginner's mind. Well, I was a babe in the woods, and that was not only okay, but was welcomed from that first April day. The 20 or so minutes of meditation at the service were quieting, although I'll confess that it sometimes felt like an hour. My early forays into the Dharma, the teachings, introduced a way of thinking that I sensed had relevance and substance. And the main reason I kept returning in those early days was that I felt better when I left. It was a safety valve, letting off the steam that had built up over the week. On Monday, with the pressure eased, I could jump back into my real world of responsibilities. The next temple service was on my calendar, but I didn't think much about it until I again showed up. Fast forward. Over the past decade and a half, I've been an active member of this Sangha, this temple community. I attend the temple services regularly, went on retreats led by Reverend Wangang, copied the entire scriptures by hand to dig further into the Dharma, received a Dharma name to signify my commitment to the practice, participated in a series of 7 deliverance ceremonies when Julie died 6 years ago, and continue to lend a hand as I'm able. Much to my surprise, a transformation has gradually taken place. My Buddhist practice is no longer something I do, it has become who I am, and I am what it is. On an opening page of the doctrinal book of Won Buddhism, the Red Book, you will find, Buddha Dharma is daily life is Buddha Dharma. Within the scriptures, the founding master said, no matter what you may be doing, whether you are wholly devoted to it or not depends on how well you understand its connection to yourself. And then, ordinary people consider practice to consist of always sitting quietly in meditation, reciting the Buddha's name, and reading scriptures, and do not realize that there exists a practice conducted throughout everyday life. This transformation of mine was not planned. It just happened. And it has become a central part of who I am and how I wend my way through my life. Let me try to explain. The Buddhist notion of one's true nature, or Buddha nature, is now at the core of my beliefs. I'm not able to describe my true nature in words, but it feels palpable. It is often described as the sun behind the clouds. The sun is always there even if you can't see it, said the Tibetan monk Tulku Urgyen Rinpoche. If true nature, the sun, is the essence of me, then I don't have to become something. I already am, whole and complete. This is so liberating and a huge contrast to the guilt-ridden belief systems of Western religions. Of course, like clouds masking the sun, I paper over my true nature with a bunch of junk. Disturbances and delusions, wrongdoings. I grasp and I cling. I attach myself to beliefs that are of my own making and have only a tangential relationship to reality. My ego, my big fat I, rises to the forefront. Yes, I often lose sight of my true nature, but it isn't gone. Furthermore, as we recite in the essential dharmas of daily practice, true nature can be restored by learning to practice equanimity, by developing wisdom, and by choosing to act mindfully rather than impulsively reacting. While I am unable to fully remove the clouds, I'm becoming better able to see through them. And my Buddhist practice is helping me do this. In his marvelous book, Why Buddhism is True, Robert Wright, a psychologist and Buddhist scholar, wrote, "The things in your environment, the sights, the sounds, the people, the news, the videos, what in Buddhism we call sensory conditions, are pushing your buttons, activating feelings that, however subtly, set in motion trains of thought and reactions that govern your behavior, sometimes in ways that are unfortunate. And they will keep doing that unless you start paying attention to what's going on. It starts with acknowledging that the world isn't happening to me. I'm doing it to myself. Those clouds are of my own making. As my friend, the psychologist and poet Ed Reiterband said, others may not wish you well, but they cannot cause your suffering." Easier said than done, but I've increasingly been able to examine what is going on in me. What am I thinking? What am I feeling? What am I doing? But before I can ask these questions of myself, I must first pause and create mental and emotional space for that contemplation. In his profound book, Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl wrote, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." The Buddhist monk Bhikkhu Bodhi wrote a similar passage. "It is in the space between feeling and craving that the battle will be fought which will determine whether bondage will continue indefinitely into the future, or whether it will be replaced by enlightenment and liberation." Much of Buddhist practice trains us to pause, to create that space. Meditation, chanting, listening to sound bells or chimes. These acts remove me from the frantic bustle of my life. And the more I've practiced, I have found I can call up these pauses more readily and often in the moment. Once I've paused and created some space, I'm then able to ask myself with clarity, with mindfulness, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? What am I doing? And then, as needed, take mindful action that is more aligned with my true nature. The clouds I've created around me simply drift away. Here are a couple of examples of recent experiences. A few weeks ago, I visited a friend in the North Carolina mountains. The trip home started with a lengthy drive down a steep, narrow, twisting, two-lane mountain road. And then it started to rain and thunder. I paused and asked myself, what am I thinking? This is going to be a scary drive. I'd like to drive slowly, but for sure there will be a giant pickup truck on my tail with no place for me to pull over to let it pass. What am I feeling? Frightened, anxious, tense throughout my body. What am I doing? Gripping the steering wheel before even turning on the engine. As I became more mindfully aware of all this, it hit me that this scenario was totally of my own making. I hadn't even started the car. My bodily tension eased. I told myself that I would drive carefully and pull over when possible if a giant pickup was riding my bumper. And in fact, I got down the mountain not only in one piece, but with a calm that I hadn't thought was possible. A second example. My friendships are very important to me, and I purposefully try to nurture them. One friend consistently makes life choices that are not in their best interest. I see no indication that the situation will improve. I really care about this person and found myself in a mental loop, worrying about them without getting anywhere. Then I paused, created some space, and asked myself, what am I thinking? This is a train wreck, and there is nothing I can do about it. What am I feeling? Concerned, helpless, and to be frank, a bit annoyed that they can't make more sensible decisions. What am I doing? Avoiding them because it's too painful to watch. It became clear that I was wrapping myself around a pole of my own doing. I took another breath and asked myself how I could be a good friend under these circumstances. I decided to stay connected, but not too tightly. Provide a shoulder as I feel able. Today I am sad, but no longer helpless, and that's where we are now. The founding master said, you must assess and check your mind over and over to see whether or not your mind ground is disturbed, deluded, or subject to wrongdoing. You must do this until ultimately you reach a state in which the mind needs no checking. My mind still needs checking, but increasingly I do it naturally many times a day, as I face small and big things. Here's a small example. Now that I've retired, my morning wake-up routine can be whatever I want it to be. But all those years of work and family life led me to create a sense of urgency to it. Totally unnecessary now, but still present. On waking the other morning, my mind went quickly to the day's activities, and I started to feel the tyranny of the urgent again. I wanted to be dressed, breakfasted, and out now. Caught myself. I smiled, relaxed the tension, and got ready. And it took no longer than when I was feeling rushed. Many factors have contributed to my current state of being, which by and large is pretty happy. My Buddhist practice has been instrumental in this lifelong and infinitely unfinished process. It has given me a sense of my center point, my true nature, even though I can't describe it in words. It has helped me take full ownership for my well-being. The world isn't happening to me. It has taught me ways to pause and create space between a stimulus and my response. Within that space, it has helped me to mindfully perceive and acknowledge what's going on inside me, including an awareness of all the attachments that are of my own creation. It has provided me with an avenue for mindful choice and action that supports my well-being and the well-being of others, edging me closer to my true nature. Not bad for 15 years. Thank you.